What is going on, everyone? Franco Tech here, back with another review video, this time taking a look at the OnePlus 6T. This is the newest phone released by OnePlus, and if you're familiar with any of their older products, you'll know that their main goal is to make a flagship-worthy device without the flagship price. And well, that's exactly what they did here with the OnePlus 6T, and I've been testing this phone out since it first launched, and well, here are my thoughts on it. But before we jump into the review, as always, please make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already for more videos like this. So as I said earlier, the OnePlus 6T just released about 2 weeks ago, and I've had a good amount of time testing out this product. It's been my daily driver since it first launched, and I gotta say, guys, I really like this phone. It has an overall beautiful design with glass on both the front and the back of the phone, giving it a really nice feel in the hands. And this is a rather large phone, coming with a 6.4-inch optic AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080 by 2280. So no, we still do not have a Quad HD display here yet. However, I really don't mind it. This display is extremely beautiful. It gets really bright and offers some really great visuals. And coming from a phone that had a Quad HD resolution, I really don't even notice a difference here. Now, like most devices today, the 6T does have a notch up at the top. However, this notch is a lot less intrusive than most notches out there. OnePlus calls this the teardrop notch, and what I like about this notch is that after about the first day of using this phone, I hardly even notice it anymore. Of course, if you're like me and you're not a huge fan of notches, you are able to hide it by adding the black bars on the side through the software, but really because of how small this notch is, I just left it how it is because I hardly even notice it. Now, something else different about this phone, specifically with the display, is that we now have the fingerprint scanner embedded underneath the display. So instead of having a dedicated scanner on the back of the phone, OnePlus was actually able to get the fingerprint scanner right underneath the display, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. Now, I know they're not the first company to do this, but still, it's a pretty cool feature to have, and it worked pretty well for me. However, it's not the best scanner out there by any means. There were a couple times where it would just not recognize my finger, or it would take a little longer than expected to read it. So it's a really cool concept to have, and I think it's amazing that a phone at this price has a scanner like this, but it does need a little bit of work, and I'm hoping that with their next model, they fine-tune it a little bit more. And if you're not a fan of the fingerprint scanner underneath the display, you do always have the option to set up a face unlock as well, which worked really well on this phone and was extremely fast. But back to the display on here was great. I really enjoyed watching videos and movies on here, and just using the phone in general. This is a great display and it did a really good job. And with the video and movie experience comes audio, and guys, I really like the speaker here on this phone. I mean, this thing sounds great. Listening to videos, movies, and music was extremely enjoyable, and overall the speaker on here is great. Now, I will say that I am a little disappointed that the 6T only has one single downward facing speaker, although they make it seem as if there's two of them on here, and that single downward facing speaker does come with the problem of constantly getting covered up easily, so that was disappointing. And what makes it worse is that OnePlus did get rid of the headphone jack. So for a company that says never settle, it seemed like they might have settled. This is something that I know a lot of people, including myself, are disappointed about, and it just really makes no sense to get rid of the headphone jack. I really don't see any good reason for this decision, and I know to a lot of people this is a major turnoff. Now, you do get a USB-C to 3.5mm dongle included, but still, I'm definitely not a fan of this decision. And another thing I'm not a fan of is that while this phone does have a glass back, it doesn't offer wireless charging, and that's something that I do feel that this phone could have had, but sadly it's not there. Now, personally, this isn't a huge issue for me, and I know that OnePlus does have to cut some corners in order to keep the phone at a lower price, so that's why we still have things like a 1080p display with no wireless charging, and also why this phone is not rated for water or dust resistance. But aside from that, the build here is great, and this is definitely a beautiful looking phone. phone with a large and bright display. Now moving over to the performance of the 6T, I'm just going to be straight up with you guys and say that this is a really fast phone. Guys, I love this phone. The performance on here is top notch and easily on par with other flagships like the Galaxy Note 9 and even the newer Google Pixel 3. That's how great this phone is. So the specs on the 6T are what you would expect to find on the most modern day flagships coming out this year. So what we have here is a Snapdragon 845, 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM depending on which model you're looking at, an Adreno 630 GPU, and also 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabyte memory options without expandable memory. On the software side of things, the 6T is running on Android 9.0 Pie with Oxygen OS on top, so this is a very stock Android look and feel without any bloatware, which is always a great thing to have. But again, with all these specs combined, the performance on this phone is great. Everything is extremely snappy and quick. Apps open up very fast, and switching from app to app is a breeze. I really haven't experienced any slowdowns, forced closes, or anything like that on this phone. And the OnePlus 6T is just a powerhouse of a phone. So playing games like Fortnite on here is extremely enjoyable. Again, thanks to the large display and also because of the great performance. Now let's get talking about the dual cameras found on this phone. So what we have here is a 16 megapixel and 20 megapixel shooter on the back of the phone with an f1.7 aperture capable of recording 4K videos at 60 frames per second. Now on paper this sounds like a really great shooter, but to be blunt, it doesn't really live up to the expectations. Now don't get me wrong, the camera here is not bad at all. You do get a lot of really nice shots here on this phone, but they won't be on par with pictures that you'll find from a phone like the iPhone XS or the Google Pixel 3. Those phones easily have a much better camera, and the 6T won't compare to those. But that's not to say that this isn't one of the best cameras out there for a phone at this price range. Now it does come with a portrait mode like most phones do these days, and the portrait mode here on the 6T does a pretty good job of keeping the object in focus and blurring out the background. And this is for both the rear and front facing cameras. Both of them have this feature that you can use. And I really like the camera on this phone. I think the pictures come out nice. However, again, this isn't going to be similar quality as you would find on a higher end flagship, but this camera still does a pretty good job. Finally, let's get talking about the battery life of the 6T. Again, easily one of my favorite things about this phone is the battery life. We do have a larger 3700 milliamp hour battery, and this thing lasts all day. I mean, on average, I got about 5 hours of screen on time, but that would sometimes go up to 6 hours, which is really good. So this is easily a phone that will last you all day with moderate to heavy usage. And if you're in a pinch for some battery power, the 6T does come with a fast charger, so you are able to get a full day's charge in about 30 minutes. Again, battery life on here was great, and although we don't have wireless charging, I do think the fast charger makes up for it. So what are my final thoughts on the OnePlus 6T? Well, while this phone did get rid of the headphone jack, still doesn't have wireless charging or water resistance, it does still have a great build, beautiful display, loud and crisp speakers, runs extremely fast, and lasts all day. I mean, this thing is great and has easily become one of my favorite phones that I've ever used, and the user experience on here is just excellent. This is an incredible phone for the price, and I highly recommend the OnePlus 6T if you're looking for flagship specs without the flagship price. But if you're coming from the original OnePlus 6, then this is not really something I would suggest jumping to, because it's a very familiar and similar experience unless you really want that new display. But that's gonna wrap up this review, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.